Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is names and nomenclature, what we call things. I touched on this a few weeks ago in my Picanti segment, but I think it is essential to delve more into this idea of names and what we call things. Suffice it to say that it's all about names and nomenclature. Whoever controls the names and the nomenclature controls the idea, controls its future, and its past. The Israeli-Palestinian relationship is fraught with explosive terms. The obvious example is the refusal of the Palestinian leadership to call Israel the Jewish state, and the refusal to call Jerusalem, Jerusalem. The Arabic and Muslim world refers to Jerusalem as El-Quds, which means the holy. It comes from the same three-letter root in Hebrew of kadosh, which also means holy. The day the international community refers to Jerusalem as El-Quds will be the day the momentum shifts away from Israel towards the Palestinians. And should the world community put Jerusalem on even footing with El-Quds by saying and writing, let's say, Jerusalem/El-Quds, Israel will be in a very difficult situation. The same equation holds true for the Temple Mount, which in Arabic is called Haram al-Sharif, or the Noble Sanctuary. As of today, Israel has the advantage. That's because Jerusalem and the Temple Mount are English terms, also found in Christian tradition. Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim leaders have begun a serious effort to rename and replace Jewish Israel components of these sites. They know that if they own the terms, they own the history and the future. That explains their constant claim that there was never a Jewish temple in Jerusalem. It explains Palestinian outrage and media explosions after the statement made by the new UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Israeli TV's Reshet Bet that said, quote, "It is clear to me that the Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. It was a Jewish temple, as it is also clear for me today that Jerusalem is today a holy city for three religions. These are the facts that nobody can deny." Palestinian Media Watch pointed out that the Palestinian newspaper Al-Ayam used the expression the Wailing Wall when writing about extending the high-speed train from Tel Aviv all the way to the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Official PA television took the newspaper to task the next morning, with the host remarking, quote, "I don't know how Al-Ayam can write Wailing Wall on its front page and not even put quotation marks." It should be absolutely clear that the wall is a real fact of history. Those who argue or say that there was no temple must be corrected. Those who say that there are different versions of history also need to be corrected. Their motivation is not intellectual honesty, quite the opposite. They hope to change history to support their political right to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. The wall is actually the outer retaining wall of the temple built by Herod in Jerusalem. Herod expanded the Second Temple, making it truly huge. He used stones which weighed an average of 70 tons. The smallest stones weighed between 2 and 7 tons. Large stones were 200 tons. And the largest of all of them, a double-course stone, weighed 600 tons. Herod's temple measured about a half mile by a quarter mile and stood 11 stories high. It is one of the most impressive architectural creations in history. So big that the Romans could not raise it to the ground. All they could do was knock down some of the smaller stones set as the top layer. The Western Wall, as we know it, is a small, tiny section of the outer supporting wall on the western side of the temple, hence its name. That section of the wall was exposed for centuries and still survives today. Many people mistakenly call the Western Wall the Wailing Wall. To do that is not only wrong, but it is insulting and intentionally degrading. Christians often use the term. The claim is that Jews would go to the wall and wail about the terrible condition they were in. In Yiddish, we would say shried, they shried. They wept about the past and the present. None of that is true. Throughout the centuries, it was called the Kotel, or Kotel Hamaravi, the Western Wall. There are many words for wall in Hebrew. Kotel is just one. Prior to the current archaeological digs, the wall was the closest place that one could get to the Holy of Holies, the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Kodesh HaKadoshim of the temple. That was the very place where Solomon built his temple, where the second one was rebuilt. This is the city that David named as his capital. It was where Abraham bound Isaac, his son, known as the Akedah in the book of Genesis. The great act that Kierkegaard called fear and trembling, the place where monotheism had its birth. The Jewish people then, as now, know that God lives everywhere, not in a single place. But the temple was where the center of ritual was headquartered. Without the temple, there was almost no Jewish ritual. Now the Palestinians are trying to rip the roots out of Zionism, Israel and Jerusalem. If there was no temple, there is no Jewish claim to Jerusalem and Israel. Shakespeare was wrong in Romeo and Juliet when he wrote, "A rose by any other name." For Israel, names are extremely important. We must become guardians of the names. On a different topic, it seems clear that Hezbollah needs money, and now they are engaged in a furious fundraising campaign. They are raising money on websites and on TV. You can donate online or by calling a phone center. You can fill out a pledge card and mail in your donation, the old-fashioned way, as we used to do. Any way you want to give them money, Hezbollah will find a way to accept it. This is not the first time Hezbollah has embarked on a fundraiser. It is, however, the first time that they have so heavily utilized new media to raise money from individuals. They are engaged in a multi-tiered campaign, one that draws on many layers of potential donors to contribute to Hezbollah. The use of crowdfunding, also crowdsourcing, through social media is a very new phenomenon for Hezbollah. The new campaign is called the Initiative to Arm Jihadists. The key terms and catchphrases that Hezbollah is using in this campaign are very enticing. Arming the jihadist is one expression. It preys on the religious fervor that transforms the simple battle into an Islamic obligation. Jihad is a requirement in Islam. Hezbollah's fundraising efforts on web and video proclaims whoever arms the fighter is considered to have fought, unquote. Another incentivizing video on the web gives the powerful pitch, you help resist. The group's video states that jihadists who fight in the resistance need clothes and military equipment. This initiative helps you to help equip them. The Hezbollah Twitter video has dynamic speakers engaging and encouraging contributions and explaining to donors and potential donors just how significant their gifts will be in achieving jihad. Fundraisers explain that while not everyone can participate in the battle with actual weapons, everyone can donate. And with each donation to Hezbollah, the donor fulfills the obligation of jihad by enabling the fighters to fight. The campaign utilizes hashtags to push people towards information and to generate a swell of ideas and talk about raising money for Hezbollah. The hashtag "Money for Jihad is a must" has become a rousing Hezbollah cheer. Hezbollah is also using their news outlets to raise funds. They've created something akin to, but not exactly like, a PBS TV fundraiser. In this case, the network sets aside a section of their website and dedicates it specifically to Hezbollah campaign fundraising. Potential donors are shown a slew of videos about Hezbollah and jihad and given various opinions and options for giving. Conventional wisdom has always asserted that Hezbollah is sponsored by Iran. That is still correct. But now Hezbollah wants more, and Iran habitually attaches serious strings to their money. The money and weapons Iran gives are always earmarked for specific purposes. Hezbollah has been receiving donated dollars from givers from around the world for years. In fact, despite the fact that it's illegal to give those donations to terrorist groups in America, much of their budget comes from the United States. There are thousands of people in the U.S. who send them donations. We know this because over the past decade or so, the FBI has conducted numerous sting operations and raids that have yielded information on just how extensive Hezbollah's illegal activities are in the U.S. and how they raise money. In 2002, Representative Edward Royce informed Congress that the FBI was actively pursuing 200 cases of Hezbollah fundraising in the U.S. According to Royce, he said, the vast majority of this activity has been linked to fundraising, specifically to attempts to use Visa cards and MasterCards for fraudulent funds to support Hezbollah, along with other criminal fundraising activities. And that's just for starters. Smuggling cigarettes from the South to Michigan, specifically Detroit, selling them at drastically undercutting the market pricing, and avoiding federal and state taxes has netted hundreds of millions of US dollars for Hezbollah. The counterfeit clothing, purses, shoes, T-shirts, businesses which are operating out of New Jersey and Queens and selling on the Lower East Side of New York and Chinatown had strong links to Hezbollah. A crackdown by federal agents in which 32 stores were raided resulted in the confiscation of, get this, 100,000 Nike T-shirts, 75,000 fake pairs of Nike sneakers, 75,000 fake designer handbags. Warehouses were also hit, netting millions of dollars of product. In most cases, profits went to Hezbollah. Even the used car market is involved. In Oklahoma, for example, cars were brought and then shipped off to West Africa. 15, 20, and 25% of the profits of those sales were sent to Hezbollah. This information was actually broadcast on local Oklahoma TV by DEA agents. And the list goes on. Here's the bottom line. Hezbollah may need money, and they are certainly extremely creative in raising the money, but that doesn't mean that we should let it happen. We need to work as diligently to stop Hezbollah from receiving money as they work to raise it. Coming up next, points of view. Here's what some important voices have been talking about. I want to discuss two columns today, one from the Jerusalem Post and the second from the National Post. First up is a column called Hamas-Fatah Reconciliation by Neville Teller. It was published on February 11, 2017 in the Jerusalem Post. The Hamas-Fatah conflict does not concern itself with religious doctrine, nor even with basic political objectives. It's about strategy, how to best achieve their goals. This column is by Neville Teller. He's the Middle East correspondent for Eurasia Review. His latest book is The Chaos in the Middle East, 2014-2016. He blogs at a Middle East journal, blogspot.com. This is how Teller begins. The Islamist world is fierce, bloody, and fratricidal. Many of the extremist groupings are in bitter conflict with one another, not always along the traditional Sunni-Shiite divide. Sometimes, intra-Islamist conflicts are essentially political in nature. One long-running political feud is the continuing struggle between Hamas and Fatah. Both organizations are Sunni Muslim. Both are pledged to restore to Islamic rule the whole of Mandate Palestine, including the area currently occupied by the State of Israel. Their fundamental disagreement is over the strategy for achieving this common purpose, and their struggle is for power within the Palestinian body politic. There is something profound about this assertion, that the real difference is that Hamas asserts that the recognition of Israel by the PA will not help achieve their goals, while the PA says that it is essential to play along with the world, especially the United States, and accept Israel. Teller then explains just how difficult it is to put Hamas and the PA back together. He calls it chimera, which brings us to a long-sought chimera of the Hamas-Fatah reconciliation. Teller writes, chimera is defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as a grotesque product of the imagination, which seems an apt description. Wikipedia lists no less than 12 attempts since 2005 to reconcile the two warring factions, all ultimately unsuccessful. Perhaps the most hopeful was the Government of National Unity formed by the agreement between Fatah and Hamas in 2014, a diplomatic coup that brought the peace negotiations then in progress between Israel and the PA to a shuddering halt. Abbas announced the historic reconciliation a month before the talks were due to end, and appeared to imply that the inclusion of Hamas in the Government of National Unity would make no difference to the aim of achieving a sovereign state based on the two-state solution. There is no incompatibility, Abbas is quoted as saying, between reconciliation and the talks. The government reports to me and follows my policies. I recognize Israel, and so will the government. I renounce violence and terrorism, and I recognize international legitimacy, and so will the government. Let me just say, chimera is a Greek mythological animal with the head of a lion and the body of a goat. It breathes fire. In modern English, it means illusory, fantasy, or better, it means impossible to achieve. Teller is absolutely correct. This is how Teller now concludes his piece, writing the following. Meanwhile, the recent announcement by the PA that the long-delayed municipal elections would take place on May 13, 2017, was immediately denounced by Hamas spokesman Fazi Barom as, quote, unacceptable. It strengthens divisions, serves Fatah politics, comes at the expense of the Palestinian people and the unity of its institutions, and confirms that the government is working in favor of Fatah. Not the most auspicious of omens for an imminent Hamas-Fatah reconciliation. I agree with Teller. Fatah and Hamas will not get together. I can only say, who knows how the PA and Hamas will get along with regard to these elections? Originally, Hamas embraced them. Now they reject them. But it's highly doubtful that the two will be able to get along at all. The second column is from the National Post. The National Post is a Canadian paper. It was founded by Comrade Black in 1998. It's a broadsheet, and it has a distribution of about 150,000. It has a popular website. The paper is a conservative bent and often reflects Comrade Black's conservative orientation. This column is by Lawrence Solomon and is entitled, Trying to Create a Palestinian State Will Repeat Mistakes That Have Led to So Much Mideast Bloodshed. It was published on February 6, 2017. Solomon is a regular columnist. His normal beat is energy, but like any columnist, he wanders out of his sweet spot to discuss other issues as well. Lawrence Solomon presents a sobering argument that says that the Palestinian state will be fraught with problems. This is how he begins. Will Palestine exist in another generation? The last thing the Trump administration should want is to repeat the mistakes the great powers made a century ago when they created artificial countries. Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Yemen, Palestine, among others, were all carved up out of the ruins of the Ottoman Empire by the great powers, chiefly Britain and France, after the First World War. It was a recipe for continual strife, as people of different nationalities, ethnicities, cultures, religions, and political traditions were forced to live together. The great powers created, in effect, mini multicultural, multinational states. The result was civil and sectarian discontent and war throughout much of the last 100 years. We see the latest chapter of those horrors in Syria, where yet another civil war has led to yet another split up. Now Solomon comes with his central argument. He brings a very standard historical argument about Palestine, actually referring to both Jews and Arabs living in the area before 1948 and the creation of the State of Israel. He writes, the creation of a Palestinian state astride Israel, the two-state solution today's great powers insist on, would have even less chance of survival than its failed neighbor states. The Arab clans of Palestine throughout the 20th century refused to accept a state of their own. Only in the 1960s did the idea of a Palestinian nation take shape when Yasser Arafat created the concept of an Arabic Palestinian people. Previously, Palestinian was a term that referred to all the residents of Palestine, Jews and Arabs. The original name of the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra was the Palestine Orchestra. The Jerusalem Post was first the Palestine Post. But Arafat never forged the united people. Most Palestinians only grudgingly accepted the rule of his Palestinian authority, and some never did. Few Palestinians identify chiefly with national identity. Their loyalty instead is clan-based, to a tight-knit group of extended families that share the same ancestry based on the father's male line and a preference for marrying within the clan. Palestinians pledge loyalty to their clan in a binding formal code of honor backed by local militias. An attack on one clan member is an attack on all members. Solomon then explains that Trump's instincts are correct and they will pressure Palestinians to crack down on terror, or he will squeeze them by withholding funds. Solomon now concludes, Trump's instincts, if applied to Palestine, could form the basis for lasting self-government determined organically by the Arabs of Palestine, unlike a single Arab state based on the pretense of a unified Palestinian people. No other governance model, at least none with a chance of surviving long, is remotely plausible. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you a few cartoons today. The first is from politicalcartoons.com. It is entitled Religion and Politics and was drawn by Jimmy Margolis. It was published on February 3rd, 2017. The cartoon takes place in Iran. Two mullahs are reading the paper and talking. The cartoon makes fun of Trump, suggesting to change the 501c3 limitations for tax-exempt status, that religious leaders should be able to endorse and discuss political issues from the pulpit. The headline reads, "Call to allow religious political activity." And then one of the mullahs says to the other, "They're putting us on notice," while the second one says that they're out to steal our system. The second cartoon is by Rick McKee and was published in the Augusta Chronicle on February 3rd, 2017. It's entitled Louvre Attack. The cartoon lampoons the bloody stabbing at the French Museum by a Muslim and the ridiculous response to it, where people were saying that the terrorist was such a loving and caring person, a gentle Muslim. The cartoon goes overboard in being especially polite. The terrorist, with a bloody sword in hand, is shouting Allahu Akbar, while the victim on the ground interrupts him mid-murderous act and says, "Pardon me, sir, just a moment. Surely there must be some mix-up. I was assured that Islam is the religion of peace." These next three cartoons are about the news of Bashar Assad's hanging prisons, where 13,000 people were hung. The international media was filled with this, and some of the cartoons focused on it also. This cartoon is from Jordan. Jordan neighbors Syria and has taken in many Syrian refugees. The cartoon is called Syrian Prisons and is by a character named Ahmed Hajjaj. This was published February 7th, 2017. There is a hole in the wall of the Syrian prison, and three people are watching. The wall is stained with blood. The people are on the outside looking into the prison. One has his mouth covered, one has his eyes covered, and one has his ears covered. See no evil, hear no evil, and say nothing. This next cartoon is from the United Arab Emirates. It's called Syrian Prison Hangings and is drawn by Perish Nath. It was published in the Khalij and the Khalij Times on February 8th, 2017. The devil is descending the stairs of the Syrian prison, and in his hand is a sign proclaiming 13,000 hangings. Three people are being hung right there. A pile of skulls are on the side, and he proudly announces, "Our branch here is doing just fine." The last cartoon is called Obsessed and is by Joop Bertrams from the Netherlands. It was published February 9th, 2017. The cartoon depicts Assad with a red rubber stamp. He's stamping everywhere, and the red rubber stamp has gotten all over. The stamp is actually a person being hung. He stamped the wall, his shirt, his head, his arms, everywhere. The point is obvious. Assad has hung thousands of people. In a moment, my own perspective and a few predictions. United States President Trump spoke with Turkish President Erdogan, and the two leaders agreed to form a united front against ISIS. Trump and Erdogan spoke about specifics and decided to work together to liberate two cities in Syria that are under the control of ISIS. The cities are Raqqa and Al-Bab. They prepared a plan, and they will act together to liberate these cities. Raqqa is the capital of ISIS in Syria. If the United States and Turkey successfully oust ISIS from Raqqa, it will very well be the near-death blow to governing ISIS. It will also be a major blow to ISIS recruitment and to the reputation of ISIS. If it happens, it means that ISIS will not have a capital and they will lose the head and heart of their state. Continuing that story, Turkey has begun their part in a ground operation to destroy ISIS. Turkish forces crossed over the border of Syria and are now liberating the city of Al-Bab from ISIS. The operation was confirmed by Turkish President Erdogan before he departed on a regional trip to visit Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and Qatar. Al-Bab is only 13 miles over the Turkish border, so it's near Aleppo. So it's not so difficult to logistically get in and out. But their next stop is Raqqa, which is 110 miles from Al-Bab. Erdogan said that the objective is to liberate 5,000 square kilometers, about 3,000 square miles, from ISIS. He actually used the word cleanse and not liberate. He also made it clear that Turkey will not stay in Syria. This is a major change in the Turkish game plan. Turkey is a very important asset in the battle to defeat ISIS. This could be a huge success. It certainly highlights the difference between Obama and his administration and the Trump administration. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. Did you know that jihad has many meanings? The exact translation of jihad is struggle. And that, of course, can be seen in Islam in many ways, especially in fighting against the non-believer. We see the military use of jihad in the Quran, as well as the non-military use of jihad in the Quran, especially, let's say, in the expression al-jihad fi sabil Allah, which means the jihad for the path of Allah. Jihad here means striving to achieve something. And then we see it in Shia and Sufi thought, the idea of a greater jihad, which is referred to as al-jihad al-akbar, as opposed to a lesser jihad, which is referred to as al-jihad al-asghar. The greater jihad is introspection and self-improvement, an internal personal struggle, as opposed to the lesser jihad, which is a physical battle with the enemy. In his work, The History of Baghdad, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, an 11th century Islamic scholar, referenced a statement made by the companion of Muhammad, a person named Jabir ibn Abd Allah. The reference statement said the following. Here's what Jabir said. We have returned from the lesser jihad, al-jihad al-asghar, to the greater jihad, al-jihad al-akbar. When asked, what is the greater jihad? He replied, it is the struggle against oneself. This is often attributed to Muhammad, but it's not actually found in the Quran. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.